Three, two, one. This is Nick,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is the Performance Play Podcast, where we give you bite-sized bits of information based on nutrition and exercise science to improve your overall performance. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about something really cool called allostatic load. And that, in terms, is the fancy word for stress on the body or compounding of stress on the body.
Yes. So we're thinking stress bucket, right? What's playing into your stress bucket? We have external and internal factors. External
Mhm.
factors would be things coming from the environment, like work stress, environment stress. Internal would be the physiological mechanisms that are going on. So do you have inflammation? Are, how's your blood sugar? How's your gut? How's your hormones? Other things that can cause inflammation in or stress inside the body.
Mhm. And how the body responds to it is kind of wild, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
we know it's something that people talk about stress, but I don't think they understand stress.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that there's also a very negative connotation around it, but
Mhm.
stress isn't a negative thing. If we think about um, your stress load, right? They've done studies on athletes before where they look at performance and the
Mhm.
amount of stress and the duration of stress.
Yeah.
And there's actually this peak called like the performance peak, where it's
Yes.
this intersection
Yes.
of the duration and the amount of stress that results in optimal performance on for the athlete. Because if we
Yeah.
didn't have any stress at all, say that athlete wasn't stressed, do you think that they would go onto that field and perform well? Probably not.
No.
Right? It's
Yeah.
the adrenaline that gets them going, the endorphins, everything. And then they hit that optimal point. The thing is, a lot of people are operating on this chronic side where
Mhm.
we're constantly stressed and we're tipping that bucket.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that's not good either, right? We
Yes.
don't want we don't want no stress, but we
Yeah.
also don't want too much stress. We
Mhm.
want to be somewhere in the middle, and we want to be able to balance this out day to day. It's not going to be perfect,
Yeah.
right? Not every day is going to be perfectly balanced and you're going to
Mhm.
feel great, because we know
Yeah.
that things happen. But for a majority of the time, we want to operate in this middle ground.
Yeah. It's you want to be as middle grounded as possible. And
Yeah.
there's good stressors. Stressors are shown to produce
Or
amazing things as
you know
well.
what, let me rephrase that. Even it's not that you want to always be in the middle ground, but it's to be able to come back to that middle or lower
Yeah.
ground after being high, because a
Mhm.
lot of people just stay in the high zone,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Um, so we have to think about that sometimes though, like how can we bring ourselves down? Or do we not have enough stress in our lives and we're not really building up to it?
right.
You know what I mean? Like maybe we're just coasting and there's nothing wrong with coasting, but are you truly being as optimal as you can be by not stressing? And that comes more sometimes towards exercise based. If you're not stressing the system enough, you're not going to make the gains you want to make.
Right, exactly. We get negative impacts on either side of the spectrum.
Mhm.
Not enough exercise, stressful. Too
Yeah.
much, also stressful, right?
Yes.
Want to be
Yes.
somewhere in the middle.
And
Hmm.
we don't want too much and too little. And it's very hard to find that balance, but it's also knowing when to understand, is this a good stressor or a bad stressor? How
Yeah,
long is this stressor going to be around for? Like, and it's framing your mind work as well. Like a good
right.
stressor, like you said, with athletes is there's that stress of performance, performing on that day, getting out there and doing the thing. That's a good stressor to have. You know, you're
Hmm.
fortunate enough to be able to play a sport, to be in front of a large crowd of people, to step out there and do your thing. That's an awesome stressor to have. Um,
Right.
but how do you come
And
down off of that stressing high back to like somewhat normal levels?
right. Recovery is a necessity, not a luxury at
Mhm.
that point.
Yes.
You need it. If you want to
Yep.
perform at that level again or surpass that, you need to
Hmm.
be able to balance that with something else.
Yeah.
And again, that's just where a lot of people go wrong, because we tend to operate in that fight or flight too more, like a majority of the time.
Hmm.
And it causes the downstream issues,
Yeah.
injury. I'm sure you see it, right? Injuries happen
Hmm.
because of too much stress on the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Too much stress, too much load, too much. And that's what like I love when I take more of a personal approach. I ask questions of like personal life questions, like how are you doing? How's life? How's work treating you? Like what's your normal programming like? Are you getting to the gym as much as you like? Those stressors. And it's like, well, work's been crazy, blah, blah. And it's like, I'm not sleeping well because work's nuts. And it's like, okay, all this compounding factors are like, what you're
Hmm.
telling me is you may not feel stressed out. And a lot of people say that, oh, I don't feel stressed. It doesn't matter. You
Right.
may not feel it because you've been running on that level of stress, we'll say, for so long, you're adapted to it. You're innate to it.
Hmm.
Like this is my normal. Doesn't have to be your normal, but this is my normal. So I don't
Hmm.
feel stressed to it. Or it's a coping strategy. The one way to say you're not stressed is to avoid the situation in general and just be like, it's not stressful. You
Yeah.
know, I'm
Right,
not stressed.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important to think about it in terms of where is it coming from
Hmm.
and what's filling my bucket, and am I tipping that bucket or am
Yeah.
I okay?
Yeah.
So one thing that, you could even do is taking everything, looking at everything in your life that takes your time and energy during the week or the day,
Yeah.
listing those out and putting it into a pie chart.
Yes.
10% here, 20% here, 30% here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just a
Hmm.
rough idea of where that time and energy is going and what's filling that bucket. And then making a pie chart next to that that looks more of like, or that creating one that you think would feel better.
Yeah. Hmm.
So maybe you need a little bit more time spent on self care or a little bit more time spent on sleep, right?
Hmm.
What do you think would look better? Maybe you need a little less time on work calls or whatever that might be,
Yeah.
right? And then kind of designing it that way. And I think that's one way we can get ahead of stress, right? Because if we're just kind of reacting all the time,
Yeah.
we're just reacting. We're never going to change the circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we can get ahead of that and we can start to make shifts, they don't have to be big, but just little shifts in our life that start to create a different day or a different week,
Hmm.
then we're kind of getting ahead of that and we're creating more space for that rest and digest, versus like being in that fight or flight all the time.
Yes. And we can't, and the unfortunate thing of today's world is that we easily adapt into fight or flight. You're stuck in traffic, you're going to be late for work, honking the horn, someone cut you off, you instantly fight or flight. You know what I mean?
Right.
The body goes right into that mode. And it's how do we get out of that mode faster? How do
Yeah.
we keep ourselves? And those are like you say, that stress bucket. That's filling it slowly. Little things are filling it slowly, and it's like
But
hit that
we can
tipping
dump
point.
some out if
Yeah.
we can come down, right? If we
Yes.
can be in that traffic and we can say, hey, instead of getting angry and flipping this guy off, I'm going to take
Hmm.
a couple of deep breaths
Yes.
and I'm
Yes.
going to call a friend or I'm going to, I don't know, something that would
Put on
calm
my
you
favorite
down in that
song.
moment, right? Put on
Yeah.
your favorite song. Exactly. I'm going to make the most out of this situation.
Yeah. Or I've been wanting to
And
listen to this podcast and haven't gotten to it. Well, I'm stuck for 30 minutes of traffic because we're not moving. So let me put on that podcast.
right. And then think about that, how that changes the trajectory of the next hour, because instead of coming from this like anxious, hot-headed place and
Hmm.
making decisions from that version of you, you're going to be making decisions from this calmer, more peaceful, more happy version. Which one do you think is going to give you the better outcome at the end of the day?
Yeah. Probably the calmer, more peaceful one. Maybe.
Yeah.
You know.
And we were just talking about this before, and I think we should bring up January, right? Because we both were laughing about
Yes.
how crappy
Yeah. Literally, it was.
January was, and just the things that happened to both of us were so out of pocket and so just not the norm, right? Things that would stress anyone out.
Yeah.
And when stuff feels like it's compounding like that, where it becomes laughable at a certain point because you're like, wow, I just locked my keys in my car for 4 hours and then someone rear-ended me. That's not real, right? Does that really happen?
Yeah.
Oh, this door came and it's still broken. The third one that
Yeah.
came, right? Okay, what kind of sick joke is this, right? And it's
Yeah.
like,
This is acid. I don't even know. I don't know what to do. Yeah. You just have to laugh it off.
and I think, like we were saying, you always have two choices whenever things happen to you.
Mhm.
You can either take it as, wow, something good is going out of this, or this is a blessing in disguise type of attitude. This is leading to something else, or maybe it's just where I'm supposed to be right now. Maybe it's just life
Yeah.
versus like, oh my gosh, woe is me. Why is this happening? Everything's falling apart. What did I do wrong? Right. We start to like question all of our life choices when
Right.
things happen to us like that.
Yeah.
What did I do to get myself here? But instead, what if it's like, this is just where you're supposed to be right now? Like, this
No,
is just,
exactly.
kind of, okay, here we are.
Yeah.
Let me just trust that everything's going to be okay and there's going to be
Yeah.
better days and operate off of that. And that's where it comes down to like, you know, pulling yourself out of that stress faster and
Hmm.
responding to it differently because there are things that we don't have control over, but we always have control over how we respond.
Yes. Well, so like you were saying with the peace aspect, you can choose peace. And it's not so much even just choosing peace, it's like rationalization as well helps.
Mm-hmm.
Like the house stuff with me kept hearing me say, like, oh, hot water heater came, it was broken. Another one came broken. I'm like, how? How the hell? Like,
Oh, it
like
was the water heater. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like the doors, just like painting the doors and just getting them to like hang again. How do they not hang the same way when I just took them off? It literally makes no sense. So
Yeah.
like little things like that, you're like, how? But if you reframe, and it's hard to do, but like when you take a step back and just look at it, I'm like, okay, but I also have a house that is a good stressor. Some people don't even have houses if they want one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Some people that are looking for houses don't have one. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate enough to have a good stressor, such as the house. Yes, it's compounding and it sucks, but like, damn, that's that's awesome to have,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or I remember recently I had a patient come in talking to me about she's so stressed with work, traveling a bunch, putting on this huge convention, all this stuff going on. And like very, very emotional. She was very upset. And I just like I sat her down, we were working on whatever we were working on. And I was like, hey, like, just think of it this way though. If you didn't work your butt off as hard as you did, if you didn't work so hard, you didn't do all those amazing things that you did, you would not be in the situation to be this stressful, to be able to put on this huge conference in front of
Mm-hmm.
all these hundreds of thousands of people, because you wouldn't be. You're this stressed because you worked your butt off to get to that stress level. That is an amazing
Mm-hmm.
stressor to have. You know,
Yeah.
some people don't have that fortunate thing. It's the same if, let's say, Amanda has to speak in front of, I don't know, 7,000 people. And it's like, oh, I'm so stressed out. I can't do this. Well, yeah, you can. You do it all the time. However, it's a good stressor to have. Like, I deserve
Mm-hmm.
this stress. I put in all this work,
Yeah. And
you
that
know?
comes back to what we were saying before, how like there's this negative connotation around it. We want to avoid it. But what if
Yes.
we embraced it instead?
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
it's funny. Someone,
It's this,
do you remember the comedian Dane Cook? Maybe
I don't
not.
know.
Anyway, so someone sent me a reel earlier today, this morning, and I've seen it before. And he was like, there's this moment before you do something amazing where like, and I'm going to quote it probably poorly here, but he was just talking about how there's this moment of anxiety that happens before you do something. And
Mm-hmm.
is it truly anxiety and stress, or is it, holy crap, I'm about to do something freaking amazing? And
Yeah.
that's what you're feeling. And it's like, wow,
Right.
think about that.
Well, that's what we were even talking about with the athlete before. If you didn't
Yeah.
have that, it would not be a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. You're there. You're out there. You're lucky enough to be in that situation, to be a starting player, to start
Yeah.
in that situation. And that's one where like I saw it recently too about like wrestling. It's one of those rare sports where you literally, as soon as you go up there, if you've ever been to a wrestling match, if you go in, there's a crowded gym, everyone's around you, but you go up, sign in with the check-in weight class with the stat people, and then you step on the mat and it's you, the guy you're wrestling, and the ref. That's it. It's one of the rare sports. Boxing's like that. It's one of the rare sports that's like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a stressful situation. Nothing prepares you for that besides doing something like that. But you have all these people around you watching you. And you deserve that because you got the starting spot. You're out there for a reason. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we forget, like you said, a negative connotation with stress, but there doesn't
Right. And
always have to be.
yeah, and I think that that's why there's two pieces to this, and it's kind of it's we're always learning, right? There's no
Mhm.
such thing as true balance. We're always learning how to get
Yeah.
back to that point. And it's the idea of yes, we want to make sure that we are creating a supportive lifestyle. We don't need unnecessary stress. That's where we need to limit. We want
Yes.
we want the good stressors that are going to push us in the direction that we want to go. We
Yeah.
don't want this overload of stress coming from all these different unnecessary areas that are holding us back from
Hmm.
actually getting to where we want to go.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's where it comes from. Okay, looking at your bucket, what's playing into it?
Hmm.
How can I dump some out? And
Yeah.
then also too, how can I start to shift my perspective from my current circumstances
Yeah.
so that I can move out of those circumstances? Or maybe it's a really good opportunity and I just need to embrace it a little bit more
Hmm. Yeah.
because stress can be a positive thing.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
the
I think there's a lot of
Yeah, there's a lot of good things you can take away from stress and stuff.
mhm.
There's a lot you can do with it. There's also
Yeah.
like how to like I love the bucket analogy and how to take things out of your bucket. What can you take out of it? What can you
Hmm.
pour out? Because it's the same with like come back to recovery with things like that. When you're recovering from injuries or just in general recovering from a workout or training, like if you're overly stressed and you can't sleep, your sensitivity to pain and all that stuff increases, like you need to
Hmm.
be able to sleep a little bit more. What are you filling your bucket with that is causing you not to sleep? You know,
Hmm.
maybe it's something so simple as you're over stressing about an email you sent because you think you offended somebody in the email. You probably didn't. A
Hmm.
lot of what you're thinking is in your own head of like worried some overthinking things when your email was,
Yeah.
hey, did you get this job done? It's like, oh, I probably offended them. They think I didn't get the job done and they think whatever, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not an actual
Yeah.
thing. Can you dump that out of your bucket so
Right.
you have less things
Exactly.
to worry
Can
about?
you choose to think differently about it or
Yeah.
release some of that? Or maybe you need to take action and message someone and follow up
Hmm.
to alleviate some of what you're feeling, but don't stay sitting in that because that's
Yes.
dumping into your bucket, right? And we
Yes.
want to let some of that go because it's keeping us from getting to where we want to be. And it's so funny because I just, again, like thinking about a client that I talked to yesterday. She has a lot of trouble with like slowing down
Hmm.
and her body, it was to the point where she actually ended up in the hospital one day because
Hmm.
she was just so burned out. And she has this belief, right? Because we dive into what are some emotions,
Yeah.
triggers, past things that have happened that are playing into your current beliefs, choices, actions, and reality, right? Because that's
Hmm.
what creates reality.
Yeah.
And something that is kind of like a deep rooted belief for her is that stress equals success.
Yeah.
And I think that that's for a lot of people. But I questioned her on it. I was like, all of the things you've done in your life, was that your stress? Did stress accomplish that? Or was that
Yeah.
just you? Why
Yeah.
are we giving all of this credit to stress, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah. The
was
hustle
it just,
bustle.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and, do we necessarily need all that extra noise? Or is
Hmm.
it holding us back? Imagine if you didn't have all that stress, what you would have accomplished or how you would have gone about things or how they would have felt
Yeah.
or what there would have been room for. We don't
Yeah.
see that side of it. We just see, oh, I was stressed at this time and then I achieved that, right? But
Yeah.
what if it could have been even more?
Yeah. Yeah. What if you thought you could have thought more straight? What if you made a different reaction? Like whatever it may be. Um,
Yeah, we know we don't operate
mhm.
optimally when we push, right? We just talked about this with the optimal performance. We know that there's a peak there. And as
Yes.
soon as we're on the other side, performance goes down. Doesn't matter
Yes.
what we're doing. Doesn't matter if we're a football player, a wrestler,
Yeah.
or we're just your everyday person
Yeah.
making choices. We know that if we are operating over that peak, performance goes down. And I don't think
Yeah.
any of us really want that.
No. And overall, whether you're an athlete or not, overall life performance goes down because then you
Right.
start feeling you don't show up as much as you want. You're not as happy as you want to be and
You
all
can't
that.
think clearly. You can't listen, right? You
Yes.
can't
You're just
hear
so
yourself
overwhelmed.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't come
Um,
up with the answers in that space.
it's one of the things where I think we have to just remember, and it's like to bring it full circle, is things you can do to help yourself understand your stress or that stress bucket is like you said, write it
Get
down.
familiar with it.
Yeah, get familiar with it. Understand what are good stressors and bad stressors. Bad stressors are like things that are just bad. Like they shouldn't be there. Like emotional stressors, whatever it is. That's not ideal. What are you gonna do? But you can choose how you respond to it. So like understanding like, okay, am I fortunate enough to have a good stressor because I made it to the situation? Or is it something out of my control? Technically a bad stressor, I guess you could say, but
Hmm.
it's not entirely bad because you really decide how you respond to it. you
Yeah,
know?
I like thinking of your charges and drains on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
And
And weigh them
we
out.
bring, right, exactly, like we bring a lot of unnecessary stress upon ourselves, like under eating, over
Mm.
exercising,
Yes.
overthinking. How
Yeah.
can I start to chip away at those and change some of them and create more charges instead, fuel
Yes.
appropriately, train at optimal levels, choose differently when it comes to my thoughts.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to work with someone on that, right? How can
Hmm.
we start to shift the
Yeah.
drains into charges?
Yes.
That's what I was
Exactly.
getting at with that pie chart before too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's all about how can you charge yourself to be better as opposed to draining yourself more. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
is this just the ebb and flow of the season right now? And it's just like our January, we're just like, holy crap, could it get any worse? And then it got worse. And then it's just like, okay, could it get any worse? And then it got worse again. It's like, is this the ebb and flow? But that's
And
where
then
you,
it gets better.
yes, because there's always another side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can, there's always going to be an instant where you're going to be under a compounding amount of stress that fills your bucket very high. So
Mm-hmm.
that being said, if the best example I can give is dieting, we'll say. We don't like that word around here, dieting, but dieting is what it is. Just if you realize that, okay, you're under immense amount of stress externally from other factors, and next thing you know, getting to the gym is so stressful for you 3 times a week because you're on this plan where you need to get there 4 times a week and you need to have this meal plan of X, Y, and Z. If that's stressing you out, empty that shit out of your bucket right now. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like, get to the gym 1 day a week. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
follow what you can of your regular diet and get as many calories in as you can. You may not hit them, but get as many as you in as you can because you don't want to underfeed. But
Mm-hmm.
don't stress yourself out more and set yourself up for failure because you're adding that into the bucket for no reason. Like, what can you
Yeah.
control to take out of the bucket in that ebb and flow? Because you
Mm-hmm.
are going to have those ebb and flows where nothing's going to be perfect. And I know you definitely work with your clients on I'm going to say it wrong because I can't think right now. I lost my train of thought, but it's
Allostatic load.
intuitive eating.
Oh,
Intuitive,
intuitive eating.
yes. Like things like that where they kind of know when they're not fueling themselves appropriately and stuff, but they don't stress about it because it just is the ebb and flow of intuitive eating or just the life right now. It's like, hey, listen, I know
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been eating 100% close to my calories, but take that out of your stressor because it doesn't stress you anymore. And I know that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge thing you work on is not being stressed around situations where food's involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's one of those,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where like, even because you're a nutritionist, I'm a physical therapist, we focus on those things, but sometimes those things can be more stressors and we can take them out of our bucket because we're trying to be too rigid on that. And
Right.
our ebb and
Exactly.
flow of life may not cause for that right now. So, what
Exactly.
can we do? The minimal thing to be true to ourselves and what we want, or at least help us towards our goals 1% without actually abandoning who we are and abandoning this whole thing completely and
Right.
take out what you need to take out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's kind of my little tangent on that.
Yeah. I think it's just a really challenging thing because it challenges it challenges a person's identity because
Of
a lot of
course.
us identify with our stress and
Hmm. Hmm.
we think that that is the only way, but it's something that I often ask myself or I tell myself because I know it's true.
Yeah.
It can be easy. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be hard.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be. We've
Yeah.
been taught that, but it does not have to be. And
Yes.
I've proved that to myself in small ways, right? But like, when I think again, when it's something deep rooted, like you have to continuously prove and prove and prove until you create this life where you're like, wow, I can choose easy and
Hmm.
I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. It's true. So actionable steps that you can take to make yourself a lot less stressed, like we said, is look at that stress bucket. What are you adding? What are you taking away? Are you adding things that don't need to be added into your stress bucket? You can write it down a pie chart, add more charges, take away any more negatives, build yourself up more. Then also take a step back and understand, am I in a situation where this is something that I'm doing and it's causing me stress, but it's an amazing opportunity for me? Take a
Hmm.
step back, try to put yourself back. And sometimes it takes writing it down to make that difference. So those are like two great ways to help understand your stress levels and kind of stay or bring yourself back down to the middle ground and operate at your highest efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for joining me again, as always, Amanda. This has been another fun podcast. Um, Enjoyed us next week for our next podcast, where I believe we're talking about muscle recovery, but I'm not 100% sure. But, and then if you guys would, I would like you to, and Amanda would definitely like it as well. You can follow us on Instagram. I'm AchievePTNJ, and Amanda is
State.fit.
state.fit at whatever the Instagram website is, Instagram, and as well, like this podcast, subscribe so you can get first notifications for all of that stuff, and even give us a rating on Spotify, Apple's, and all of the places that you're listening to. So,
Amazing.
yes,
Thanks, Nick.
thank you.